Hey guys, welcome back to the Geography Academy. Remember, this video is just a small part of a much larger course that's available below if you just follow the links and instructions. Section 4 then, for ecosystems under threat, we're going to look at the different biomes around the world. We're going to focus on two in particular and bring in some case studies on how they're managed sustainably. So just to remember that this is a large-scale ecosystem with specific climate conditions, soil type, dominant plant and animal life in the region. So it is the ecosystem mix of abiotic and biotic factors in a region. Climate's going to dictate then what can grow in the area, and the vegetation will react to the climate. This will help create then the soil characteristics and then the animals that are able to inhabit it. We think about two major ones that are quite close to each other, the tropical rainforest and the tropical savanna climate or tropical grassland. In the tropical rainforest, the temperatures remain quite consistent between 25 and 30 degrees with the highest annual rainfall. Vegetation then is going to be very dense and high biodiversity and biomass. The flora fauna in the same category with huge biodiversity and overall biomass connection with the vegetation. Soil is generally infertile because it has a rapid nutrient cycle and leaching, where we talked about this before, the water then bringing the nutrients through the soil and removing it from the area. So it's found roughly 0 to 10 degrees in latitude, but not always. And some of the main ones mentioned there in the Amazon, Congo, and Southeast Asia. Tropical savanna, then, tropical grassland, is has a bigger temperature range than tropical rainforest, so we can see a 20 to 30 degrees Celsius range. It has a lower amount of precipitation, but quite a range between maximum and minimum. And we can see scattered trees and grasses changing seasonally due to a change in rainfall. And we can often see very large animals in these areas due to the prospect of grazing and large biomass there as well. Soil fertility then can have leaching as well, but has a higher fertility overall. And it's just that extra little bit. So the rainforest is found 0 to 10 degrees, normally, not always, and then 10 to 20 degrees is where we'd find most savanna climates. So African savanna, Brazilian Cerrado, Northern Australia have huge areas then of savanna. Okay, so let's look at the biotic factors. The first one is to talk about low pressure. Low pressure then is when the air rises due to lower barometric pressure, usually warmer air that's heated up close to the equator will tend to rise. And when it rises, it then condenses. It brings moisture with it, condenses into clouds and causes precipitation. Now, the increased presence of vegetation will, of course, increase. So overall, we have evapotranspiration, high levels of evapotranspiration, high levels of precipitation. So that is one of the main reasons why we would see a lot of the climatic factors of a rainforest. In the other areas, then, deserts, for example, have high pressure areas. And when we're moving away from the low pressure area that's closer to the equator or between 0 and 10 degrees north and south, we would see that the vegetation starts to reduce down. We get into the grassland area and then we get into the desert area after that. So this also works in other areas. We can see from the polar region, again, high pressure, lax vegetation and cold temperatures until you get down sort of to 60 degrees, where the low pressure system brings back like temperate forests. Now, this is the concept. So we can see these biomes changing throughout the world, and they're linked to what we're experiencing in terms of high and low pressure then along the surface. So this is the area we're focusing on closest to the 0 degrees here, which is the equator and is the low pressure system. Also, we should add at this stage that the low pressure system that we're referring to here near the equator won't always be on the equator, so we have to call it something else. The equator 0 degrees doesn't change, but if the low pressure system moves, we have to talk about it as the intertropical convergence zone, and that's because it's inside the tropics. So because it's inside the tropics, then this means it's the intertropical convergence zone where the air is converging into one place and forming a low pressure system. So it's not always bound to the equator. Now we can kind of see that this would have a major influence over it. So latitude or distance away from the equator, there's the equator line here. And we can see that the blue here showing us the rainforest area that is very much on 5 to 10 degrees north and south in the different continents. And there's different like pockets of regions then that also have technically rainforest territory as well, that are a little bit further away than that. So these regions then would technically be rainforests as well. And then we can see regions that in the light blue will extend in greater areas there, never really getting down to 30 degrees, but expanding down quite close to it there. So kind of like that 10 to 20 range that we were talking about before. So that range there could see then high temperatures as well, maybe more seasonal precipitation. But why is it that there's such a difference? We're just going to have a look at a few of the other influencing factors that causes low pressure systems to act the way that they do. One is that there could be blocking or deflection, and when we think about it, we've got desert on one side here, we've got the Andes Mountains, and then we have rainforest on the other side. So one of the reasons for that is that the air moving up through the rainforest will cause precipitation in this area, but it won't continue past the Andes Mountains. So this is why sometimes we can see things like deserts in the same line of latitude as rainforests. They're not able to get the same amount of precipitation there, just as we see here with India and the Tibetan Plateau.